This is a passage that you might be familiar with. It's called the Beatitudes. Of course, it would be easy for us to just, call them what they are, the blessings. That's what Jesus says, blessing. But, we've just got, there's reasons for all these names. But just like we don't say the good news where people talk about Jesus, we call it the gospel because we got to make up our own word or use our own word. We don't just say these are the blessings, we say they're the Beatitudes. Beatitude, by the way, guess what it means? Blessings, right. So, Jesus gives these Beatitudes. I want to stop for a minute because this is one of those cases where the fact that the same story or the same saying shows up in somewhat different ways in different parts of the Bible becomes kind of important. So I'm going to do a little Bible here. If you already know this, bear with me. But if you don't, it'll help you understand where we're going. So this reading comes from the Gospel according to Luke, which is one of 4. There are 4 Gospels, and each one tells the story of Jesus' life and ministry in a different way. And they all focus on the time when he was out preaching and up to the time where he was crucified and rose again. They all kind of cover just the last couple of years of his life. And they all do it a little differently. But 3 of the Gospels, there's Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the first 3 in the Bible, they all have, you might say, the same plot. They all follow the same pattern. John is more or less completely different. Maybe we'll talk about that another time. But Matthew, Mark, and Luke all tell the same events. But what makes them different is Matthew and Luke have a lot of Jesus' sayings and teachings. And sometimes some of the sayings are in both. Some of them are just in one or the other. And each one of these Gospels is putting a different perspective on Jesus' life. If you think about even someone famous, I think because they're doing all this stuff for JFK, because it's the 50th anniversary of his presidency, you could pick up 4 books about JFK. They would each tell you things which were true. They would all put them a little differently. They would highlight different aspects. And the Gospels are kind of the same way. And the fact that we have 4, I'll tell you, in the ancient church, there were people who thought that we should kind of put the 4 together and make one consistent story, where all the pieces fit together. Because when you try to fit the 4 Gospels together, there are places where it's hard to see how they match up. But the church recognized that having these different perspectives on Jesus helped us to remember that we're allowed to have different perspectives on Jesus. That God is bigger than us. And there are different ways of looking at God that are true, both true and yet not the same. So we have these 4 Gospels, all the Word of God, all different in different ways. And this is a point where the differences become important, because the Beatitudes show up in Matthew and they show up in Luke. And in Matthew's, there's a list of blessings. And back in the fall, we did the whole Sermon on the Mount. And that was the summary of Jesus' teaching. It was the place where what was really important about what Jesus had to say was put in one place, right at the beginning of Matthew. This sermon is the Sermon on the Plain. Jesus comes down from the mountaintop and goes to a level place and talks to his disciples. That's one of those places, even that is a sign of those aspects. Matthew has Jesus on the mountain because he wants you to think of Moses giving you the law, because he was writing to Israelites, to Jews. He wanted them to know that Jesus was the teacher, the lawgiver, the successor, the prophet. Luke is writing to Gentiles, to people who know very little about God or the Bible. And what they do know, what they learn is they're on the outside, because they're not part of the people who God called to be his chosen people. And so for those people who are outsiders or maybe don't know anything at all, Luke gives the Sermon on the Plain where Jesus came down from the mountain and was right up around the people on a level place, level with them. Both true, Jesus is the teacher and the lawgiver. He is a prophet like Moses. He's the person who told us how to follow God. But he also comes from God to us, to be with us. Both different, both true. And with the Beatitudes, it's the same thing. See, in the Beatitudes that Matthew gives, he records the blessings. And then he stops. And he kind of goes on to the next thing. Here, it's not quite the same. We do have blessings. We have, blessed are you poor. Blessed are you who are hungry. Blessed are you who weep. Blessed are you when people speak badly about you. Those are the Beatitudes. They're in there just like the ones that we find in Matthew. And that's so nice. They're sorts of comfort for those times when we're hungry or poor or weeping or sad, whatever it is. When we're troubled, we get this, you're blessed. But that follows up with this thing which is not so comforting at all. The woes. Matthew doesn't do the woes. Matthew left the woes out because they weren't part of the message he was trying to give us. I wouldn't even say trying. The message he was called to give us is probably a better way to put it. Luke mentions the woes. And the woes go with the blessings. He says, blessed are you who weep. Woe to you who laugh. I'm out of order. Blessed are you who are poor. Woe to you if you are rich. Blessed are you if you are hungry. Woe to you if you are full. Blessed are you if men speak badly about you. Woe to you if people speak well of you. Now, some of you might be okay after hearing that. But for me, especially remembering that rich didn't mean that you had, a big screen TV back then. Rich meant that you were secure, that in the foreseeable future, down the road, you would be able to ensure that you had the needs of life. So rich meant you had enough income or food or land or whatever that you'd always be able to eat and have a roof over your head. So I'm rich. I'm not weeping. We went to the store yesterday, had a cinnamon raisin bagel for breakfast. I'm full. And I gotta tell you, I take remarkably little criticism for as much trouble as I try to cause. Pretty much people speak well of me. So I'm listening to these, and the first thought, uh-oh, woe is me. And it's a troubling thing to open up the Bible and see basically, hey, Alan, woe is you. They say that everything in the Bible we should read as though it's directed to us personally. If you can put food on the table, and if you have a roof over your head, woe is you. That's troublesome, to put it mildly. What do we do with that? How do we deal with that? What does that mean? Well, to get back to it, I want to go back to the fall, which, and I say this many times, I never expect anybody to remember any sermon ever. That's kind of a rule in preaching. So I'm going to say this again, and if you're one of the lucky few who for some reason remembers this from 6 months ago, that's okay. It's not to be expected. The Sermon on the Mount has these blessings in it. And the word blessed doesn't mean God is rewarding you so much. It sometimes can be translated as lucky, or fortunate, or happy. It means more, and the thing about it is that in that time, everybody believed that your fortune came from the gods. This is a pagan word originally. And what it meant is you were in good with the gods. You had a good relationship with the gods. And for believers in God, it's you're in a good relationship with God. So you could say, blessed are you. You could say you're in a good relationship with God if you are poor. Well, wait a minute. If you are hungry, if you are weeping. And this is one place where that thing of fortunate kind of comes in. Because what you have to realize is that Jesus didn't say, blessed will you be if you are poor, because you will be rich, you will inherit the kingdom. He didn't say, blessed will you be if you are hungry, because you will be filled. He said, blessed are you. It's easy to read this and to just see kind of almost a promise of an insurance policy. You might have to pay some now, but you'll get yours later. Delayed gratification, the same thing they say when you go off to school. Well, yeah, you're spending a lot of time and energy and money now, but in the end, it's going to pay off. Just stick at it for a while, and sooner or later, it'll pay off. You'll get what's coming to you. You'll get your reward. And it's easy to read the Beatitudes that way. You get your reward, you pass up the reward now, and you get it later. Which would be the woes then, right? If you have your reward now, you're going to get punished later. But what Jesus says is, you are blessed. You are blessed right now, present tense. You are blessed if you're going through all these things. Well, how does that work? Well, this is one of these points where we're going back to some people who have been around longer than me is helpful. Because one of the things when I talk to people who went through the Great Depression, and it's funny because they call this the Great Recession. Yeah, it's not the same. I did some looking up of numbers. It's not even close. Not even remotely close. And one of the things people say to me who went through the Depression, and some who didn't, is, you know, we were poor and we didn't even know it. Sometimes we were poor and we did know it, but we were happy. We stuck together. We took care of each other. You hear these things. People come and talk about their past and they say we were poor and yet we were blessed. Now, not everybody does, believe me. I don't mean to say that the Depression was a wonderful experience for everybody who went through it and it was just a grand old time. But it is striking to me how often people tell me, we were poor, but we were happy. We were poor, and this is one, but we didn't know it, but we had enough. We always made it. We got through somehow. And it strikes me that if you are poor, you can be content with what's there. You can know that what you have is going to be enough. And sooner or later, you'll be filled. If you are willing to live with what you have, if what you have is enough, you will be filled. You will have enough. You will be blessed. Not because you have a big pile of food, but because what you have is enough. You know, it's a statistic that we see again and again that poor people are far more generous than financially secure people. That people who stretch, who are scraping by, are quicker to give to charity, to friends, to neighbors, than people who have enough. Maybe that's why they don't have so much money, who knows? But that's actually not true, even when you take that into account. People who have learned to live, or have needed to live receiving help, know how to live giving help. There's a generosity there that I'm not saying it's a universal rule, but in general, it's easier and easier to get away from generosity as you have the security and the stuff to be secure and with what you have. Does that make sense? Okay, maybe. But if you are poor, you are blessed now. Even with laughter, you know, if you're weeping, you will be fed, you will laugh. We know that. If anybody's been through a great tragedy, a terrible experience, I mean, something really wrenching, it may take a long time, but the day comes when no matter what you're facing, you laugh. You can't help it. And the more we trust God to take us through whatever it is that we're facing, the easier it is to see those opportunities for laughter. It doesn't take away the problem. It doesn't make us feel better about what's going on, but those opportunities in there that for laughter that we will see, even if we can't now, those are there. With reputation, even. You know, having a teenager, I watch a lot of teenage media. And one of the themes, one of the stories that teenagers, that they tell over and over again is the kid who worries about what everybody thinks and finds out that the way to be happy is to quit worrying about what everybody thinks. Just be yourself. Now in some of the movies, you be yourself and everybody loves you. Some of the movies are more realistic. You be yourself and you become an outcast, but you're happy. That's probably more the way it goes in real life, as far as I can tell. But all these things, as we let go of them, we have the opportunity to be blessed today with enough. And that's what the woes mean, right? The woes are for today too. If you are living this way, you are in trouble today. It's not woe is you because God is going to come and take away your stuff. It's not woe is you because God says that having money is a bad thing, and if you have money, it's going to be stripped away from you and you're going to be punished. No, it's different than that. It's woe is you because you don't have enough. And you see this. And here, I want to get really specific because I saw something this weekend. I want to bring this home, I'm kind of general. I want to be really clear and very, very specific about what I'm talking about here. So I read this headline on the web, which I'm going to see right now. Or later. What? The headline reads, go one more, Lindsay. Well, the headline reads, yep, it's not her fault. The headline reads, in December 2010, I can memorize it because it was in December 2010, consumer debt and credit card debt increased for the first time in 2.5 years. This is a clear sign that the economic recovery is taking hold. This is true. Great news. We're putting more money on our credit cards again. The economy is coming back. This was a real article. Because the economy, we talk about the economy, right? The economy is based on people spending stuff. That's what measures the economy. And all the people saying we got to work to get our economy going, what they mean is you got to spend more money. They don't measure how much money we actually make or have. That's not the economy. The economy is how much we spend. Our whole country, literally, is built. Our strength is founded on the principle that it's good to buy stuff you can't afford. And if everybody buys stuff you can't afford, we say we're in good times. If everybody buys stuff you can't afford, things are supposedly going great, right? Well, we can create some jobs as soon as people start buying. What are they going to buy with? They don't have jobs, right? This is the problem. And one of the reasons we're in a mess is because people, for the last 2 years, have said, maybe if we don't have any money, we shouldn't buy anything. This is a new idea. And it's hurting our economy. Our church teaches this financial peace university that says cut up your credit cards, pay off your debt, and stop using them. I looked up, if everybody in the United States cut up their credit cards, we'd have a second Great Recession, just as bad as this one, for another 2 years. Because that's how long it would take for the money that we wouldn't be spending to stop having an impact. The world is telling you, buy stuff you can't afford all the time. We just had the Super Bowl. What's the best part of watching the Super Bowl, if you're not a football fan? The commercials. We love the commercials. You know, I come from Michigan. I had people calling me saying that they saw the Chrysler commercial with M&M, and they said, I cried. It was, and I'll tell you, I'm from the, you know, we're proud of being from Detroit, being a car company, and being American and all that, right? And somebody, and people were talking about this, my friends, people back home. And finally somebody said, you know, I'd be really happy about that ad if it were made by a nonprofit to make you feel good about Michigan. But the people who made that ad are trying to get you to buy their products, and they're the people who got us here in the first place. He said, I'm not happy about it at all. And then somebody said, well, no, because Chrysler got sold to the Italians, so we're not giving money to those people, we're giving money to the Italians. That's okay. But we get so caught up in getting used to the fact that people are trying to just buy, get stuff, that we forget that in the end, it's not going to be enough. You know, the world, literally the world, our country, the American system is based on convincing us that we never have enough. That we always have to be going out for the next thing. That we always have to be reaching to try to grab the next cool thing. And if you buy into that, you will never, ever be able to be satisfied. You will never have enough, ever. You will be miserable, and there will always be people with products available to help you out. They will always cost money, and they will never stop flowing. Jesus said, if you live that way, woe is you. Today, woe is you. And Jesus said there's another way. It's the way of being satisfied. It's the way of trusting in God. You know, the passage from Jeremiah, it said, cursed is the man who trusts in man. He'll be like the tree in the desert that withers. But blessed is the man who trusts in God, not just men. That was an older version, but women too. Blessed is the person who trusts in God, because they'll be like the tree in the desert that doesn't wither when the drought comes. Drought comes either way. God didn't say, if you trust in me, I'll make sure you always get through and never have, well, if you trust in me, I'll make sure nothing bad ever happens to you. God said, if you trust in me, when bad things happen, it won't faze you. You will still, says Jesus, you will laugh. You will be full. You will inherit the kingdom of God where people follow the way that God called us to live, the way that God made us to live. And you won't need to be turning to things that never feed you, things that people are selling you in order to be filled. And so what Jesus said in these Beatitudes is very, very specific. As Luke presented them to us, the lesson is, don't trust in the things of this world, in the stuff, in the reputation. Trust in God and nothing else, no one else, and you will always have enough. And so today, as we stand together, we're going to sing a song about having enough. We're going to sing a song about knowing who we have our strength in. We're going to join together, so please stand.